Better Preach, episode 83. You better know your audience. Welcome to Better Preach, a podcast for Catholic leaders on developing and delivering great Catholic talks. I'm your host, Ryan O'Hara, a Catholic speaker, podcaster, and consultant, and I'm so excited to join you on your journey of communicating the true, the good, and the beautiful. I'm assuming when you're getting ready to give a talk, what you're thinking about primarily, which is what I'm typically thinking about as well, is what am I going to say? And you're working really hard on that. And I know if anything that's going to be ready, come time when you're handed a microphone in front of a group of people, is you have a plan for what you're going to say. But I don't think we always plan on preparing for what will be heard. And the only way that you can do that is to kind of get behind the audience and understand where they're coming from, who they are, what their makeup is, and how to best address the topic to this particular audience if we're going to reach our speaking, preaching, teaching goals for whatever Catholic audience we're speaking to. And so today, I want to dig into knowing your audience. And I want to give you 2 sentences that if you fill in these blanks, you'll have a much better shot at knowing your audience and being able to really dial in your content to speak to the people who are in front of you. So this is actually part of a series that I've been doing over the course of a number of episodes. It's a 4-part series, and this is the 3rd one. We're kind of doing them in different orders. One of the key convictions I have is that every talk we need to make clear, we need to make compelling, we need to make applicable and actionable. And so some months back, actually almost a year ago, I did episode 59 on compelling, how to make sure that we have something to say. So that was the 2nd pillar. The 1st pillar is to make it clear. I did that on episode 77. That's episode titled Simple plus Visual equals Memorable. And today is that 3rd pillar, make it applicable, knowing your audience. We'll get to actionable at some point here in the near future, but this is the 3rd part of this 4-part series. I hope you'll stop by and say hi on Instagram at Better Preach. Would love to connect there. And if you could be so kind, I would love to hear from you on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with a rating and written review. I'd love to hear what you think about the show. Let's get started. About 10 years ago, I had a great opportunity here locally in the Twin Cities. Net Ministries would sponsor a monthly gathering for teenagers from all over the region. 1,000 plus teenagers and adults would gather once a month for Mass and a talk and some worship and praise. And every year they would do one kind of split session for men and for women. And one of those years is about 10 years ago, 2013, 2014. I was invited to give the talk to the guys. And I was ready for the talk. I was excited about the talk, worked really hard on it, and arrived at the Net Center. And I saw a dear friend, Father Fred Gallia, who's been in ministry forever and a really trusted leader, teacher, priest, just a wonderful man. And he was presiding at Mass that night, and he asked me about my talk. And so I shared a little bit of kind of what my plan was for the talk. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "Don't forget that you're talking to teenagers." And while maybe he meant it as a sharp rebuke, and I didn't really experience it like a sharp rebuke, but I experienced it like a rebuke. A soft rebuke is like, hey man, there's a group of 500 teenage guys in this room that you're about to speak to. Don't forget that you're speaking to teenagers. And the talk went okay that night, and it was a good talk, but I may have forgotten that I was speaking to teenagers. And I had a plan that I was going to give this men's session, and all I was thinking about was the content. I wasn't really thinking about where my audience was. And so I will never forget that moment. Thank you, Father Fred Gallia, for your subtle but powerful reminder. Don't forget the people that you're speaking to. And, it would be like this. It'd be like feeding or trying to feed steak to a baby or a bottle to a teenage boy. We often let our audience be an afterthought in our preparation for our talks. At least that has been my experience. And even St. Paul uses a similar kind of food analogy to convey the same idea. He says in 1 Corinthians 3, I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not yet ready for it. And so why do we struggle with this so much in the talks that we're given? I think there are a couple of reasons. I just want to note these, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about why you think we struggle with this as well. First, because communication is not what is said, but rather what is heard. But we think the opposite. We think communication is whatever is said, and what's heard is someone else's problem, when in fact, the reverse is the truth. Communication is not principally what is said, but rather what is heard. St. Thomas Aquinas says that communication is received in the mode of the receiver. So perhaps that quote has been sort of updated. And here we go. Communication is not what is said, but what is heard. So that's the first reason I think we struggle with this. We assume the opposite. We assume that communication is precisely and only what is said. Secondly, I think we make a really big assumption. We assume this: if it makes sense to me, it also makes sense to you. And so all I have to say is what makes clear sense to me. And I'm assuming you understand, you're ready for, you can capture everything that I'm saying. That's a massive assumption. And finally, the third reason I think we struggle with this is because we're pretty self-absorbed, or at least I'll say I'm self-absorbed. It takes a ton of curiosity, humility, and empathy to do the hard work of imagining and learning and envisioning what it might be like to see the world through the perspectives of the people. And again, it's not just, there's not a monolith in front of you. There's a group of people all bringing very different perspectives as well, uniquely. And so we get pretty self-absorbed. And so we have to get out of ourselves and remember, it's not about me. The talks that I give, the talks that you give, you're maybe third on the list, at maybe further. First, it's about Jesus and the gospel. Second, it's about the audience that you're speaking to. And third, or somewhere down the list, maybe it's about you. But you're not number one or two on the list for sure. But we kind of make it about that, don't we? At least, again, that's been my experience. I think that's why, for these three reasons, we struggle with this so much. You have a special delivery to make. Imagine if someone would send a letter and just write my name on it and didn't write my precise address. Is it going to make it to me? Of course not. We have to know our audience. We have to know the address where they live, if you will, to be able to get it right. Because again, what's at stake? The gospel is at stake. That's why this matters so much. Not that you give a good talk, but that the gospel is heard and that those people can respond to its promises. I heard an incredible story from a friend some years back who grew up in the Bronx, and his dad had him taking the trash out, and he would take the trash out week after week after week, and he would put it in this, what he thought was like a trash chute. But over time, a smell started to emerge in the building, and it got stinkier and stinkier. And they finally figured out that my friend, this young boy, didn't deliver the trash to the right place. He delivered it to the wrong drop box, and it was collecting for months and months and months and clogging up this pipe and causing a terrible smell in the building. And so that's kind of how I think of it at times. I have a package to deliver. Again, it's not trash. But if I have a special package to deliver, I want to make sure that the person it belongs to receives it. And so that's our charge. That's what's at stake. The gospel and people's salvation is connected to us delivering these messages to the right place. But I want to give you a helpful sentence that you can fill in the blanks for each talk that you're going to give to help better know your audience and prepare to bring a particular message to a particular audience. So here's the first sentence. I'll name the two blanks. How could I best explain blank to blank? The first fill in the blank is topic. The second fill in the blank is audience. How could I best explain this topic to this audience? And so we need to get specific on topic and audience. And that's really the challenge we have, bringing the content that we have ready to be spoken to a particular audience. But first, I want to talk about why I used the word explain. I think it's a helpful phrase that helps us get into the mindset or kind of to get into the psychology of what it is we're really trying to do in any given situation. I could use word like teach, how do I best teach, or how do I best preach, or how do I best testify? These are different kind of modes of Catholic speaking. But I really like the word explain because, again, that word tells a particular kind of picture. I sometimes think, how would I explain what Jesus did on the cross to a 5-year-old? I wouldn't ask myself, how would I preach what Jesus did on the cross to a 5-year-old? That what feels like makes the most sense there is using the word explain. So I love that word explain. I think it can be really helpful. How could I best explain this topic to this audience? And so we have two fill in the blanks there. And I think the more specific that you can be with each fill in the blank, the better. Let's take topic, for instance. Let's say you're going to do a talk on sacraments. You could start with that. How could I best explain the sacraments to this audience? Or you could go a little deeper. How could I best explain a sacramental worldview to this audience? Third, you could get even more specific. And I want to encourage you to be as specific as you can with what you fill in the blank for topic. This gets back to what we talked about in episode 77, where do you know exactly what it is? What is the main idea that you're bringing to any one talk? Can you summarize it in one short, powerful, pithy sentence or phrase? And you might say, all right, how could I best explain sacraments as a guaranteed encounter with Jesus Christ and why they are an irreplaceable part of our spiritual lives? Am I talking about sacraments? Am I talking about sacramental worldview? Yes. But that sentence can really paint a picture for what it is you're wanting to communicate. So how could I best explain sacraments as a guaranteed encounter with Jesus Christ and why they're an irreplaceable part of our spiritual life to this audience? All right. So I hope what you're seeing here is I'm just trying to make the point that be as specific as you can about the topic. Same thing with the audience. When it comes to what you fill in the blank for your audience, you could just use the phrase Catholics. How could I best explain my topic to a group of Catholics? You can go deeper. For me, how could I best explain that topic to a group of Catholic teenage guys? Again, more specific. Or finally, this is actually a scenario that I've been in. How could I best explain this topic to a group of 90 teenagers from rural Missouri who are only a little interested in the Catholic faith and who have to make an 8-hour confirmation retreat? Again, that's a much clearer picture of my audience. Were they a group of Catholics? Yes. Were they a group of Catholic teenagers? Yes. But more specifically, they were a group of 90 Catholic teenagers from rural Missouri who were two things: only a little interested in the Catholic faith and who have to also make an 8-hour confirmation retreat. That's a better picture of my audience. And so in terms, now I'm going to give you my second fill in the blank. So how could I best explain topic to audience? I want to help you frame a sentence to help shape your description of your audience. It would be a group of blank from blank who blank. Lots of fill in the blanks here, folks. It's a group of blank from blank who blank. So a group of blank. That first blank is where I would put 90 Catholic teenagers. And so what I did there was I've got the number, I've got a simple demographic description. It could have been 90 moms, could have been 90 married people. It could have been 90 college students. You get the idea. So a group of number plus demographic. From, and this is a key thing, what's their kind of common context? For that group, the common context was rural Missouri. And that says something. And it could have been one of those things where, let's take, I don't know, like a Steubenville South in Tucson, Arizona. That could be a group of 2,500 Catholic teenagers from mostly Arizona and the Southwest. But again, that's very different than a Steubenville up in the Northeast or the Northwest or in St. Louis. Each of these would be very different contexts. So a group of 90 Catholic teenagers from rural Missouri who, what? Give me a description. And the more descriptions you can give of your audience, the better. And so for me, I gave two descriptions. What I knew about them was this is a group of 90 Catholic teenagers. They're only a little bit interested in the Catholic faith. And how do I know that? Well, how do I know any of this? This is why it's so key. One, maybe I do know the audience well, and I've been speaking to them for many years. But maybe you're being brought in to speak to a new audience. Your job is to investigate, is to get curious, is to ask good questions of the person who's inviting you in to speak, and to learn everything you can in a 30-minute, hour-long conversation. Send them some questions that they can fill out. Help them describe the audience that they're bringing you in to speak to. And so based on the conversations that I've had with folks, told me that all these teenagers, they're moderately interested in their faith. And what I know is they're required to make this 8-hour confirmation retreat. So again, just the context was important. And these descriptors helped me get into the mindset. And so what I've tried to do here today is to give you some sentences that you can fill out so that you can better understand who you're talking to and how you can address your content to them. And I think when it says, how could I best explain topic to audience, getting as specific as you can, trying to always go maybe one layer deeper, one layer more specific on your topic, one or two layers deeper in your description of your audience. And when you put that sentence together, and that will be the sentence that will kind of drive your preparation and planning. And a tip that I would give you kind of finally here is start with understanding or describing your audience first. That's the second fill in the blank in the sentence, but start with that one first. Then as you're preparing and working, you're able to get more specific on your topic because you understand more of who it is that you're speaking to. So your preparation, your prayer, and everything that you're working on starts with who it is that you're speaking to. Start with that one first. All right, folks, Love to hear what you think about these solo episodes, if you find them helpful. I think for each talk, there's got to be 4 things. You have to make it clear. You've got to make it compelling. You've got to make it applicable. And that's what we're talking about today in terms of knowing your audience. And you have to make it actionable. In a couple of weeks, not sure when, we'll share on that particular topic. But these are the 4 pillars that I'm always asking myself about the talks I'm giving, the talks I'm helping others to prepare and to give. And I'm asking these questions. Is it clear? Is it compelling? Is it applicable? And is it actionable? This has been a kind of helpful, sturdy guide for me. I hope these sentences, these fill-in-the-blank sentences, you know how much I love my fill-in-the-blanks. I hope that these templates can be helpful for you as you're preparing to give talks. It is an honor and a joy to share this podcast with you. So grateful for all the feedback and the encouragement. If you have any ideas about the show, please do reach out at ryanohera.org/betterpreach. There's a little contact form there. I would love to hear from you. A rating and written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify literally makes my day. Love you all. I wish I could see you all. I just talk into this microphone in my storage closet downstairs. But thank you for being here with me today. We will see you next time. God bless.